We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody, to a little bit of a live edition of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. It is Wednesday, January 2nd, 2025, and hope everybody had a great new year. It has been a few days since we last talked to you. The plan was to go live after the college football playoff on Tuesday night, Wednesday night, whatever it was. But obviously the unfortunate circumstances in New Orleans, we decided to postpone. We decided to delay until after the Sugar Bowl. Well, the Sugar Bowl is done. The quarterfinals are set. And Notre Dame has just beaten Georgia as the SEC's just painful postseason continues. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to react live to the Notre Dame-Georgia game, which just went final. Final score 23-10, Georgia wins. I thought it was sort of a masterclass by Marcus Freeman in terms of how he coached that game, what he did right, what he did wrong. Kirby Smart, I thought 2 or 3 really bad tactical mistakes, and we're going to discuss that. And then from there, we will get to the rest of the college football playoff. Listen, transparently, bottom line is that we're 24 hours removed from the other 3 games, so we'll probably be a little bit quick, but we will talk about the Arizona-Texas controversy. Did the refs get it wrong? Did they cost Arizona State the game? Ohio State, Torres has got to take a smack on the chin here because I've been so wrong on the Buckeyes. Credit to them. They are clearly the best team in college football. And, of course, Penn State winning a quarterfinal as well. Before we get started, it is a new year. Please do me a favor. Make sure that you are subscribed to the Aaron Torres Pod and Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. We are so close to 50,000 subscribers. Maybe I'll do something for 50K. We'll do a live chat. We'll do something. I'll give away some merch. I need you to subscribe. If you're not subscribed on YouTube, please make sure to do so. Just click that subscribe button. Support the show. We're at like 48.4 and change. Make sure you get us to 50K. Also, make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify. Producer Matt, do me a favor. Throw the Apple link in the feed there on YouTube. Do me a favor, subscribe there as well. If you want to download a few old episodes to pump up our numbers, we appreciate your support. So thank you for everything, and make sure you're subscribed. Speaking of thank yous, it's a new year, but things have not changed. We love working with Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you about Cauley Puffs for months now. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. It's the new year. You still want a snack. You still want to eat good stuff, but you want to be healthy. It's 2025, new year, new you. You want that healthy snack, but the delicious snack as well. That's where Cauley Puffs comes in, okay? These are baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients, but they are delicious. Don't take my word for it. You can try them for yourself. Visit CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com. CauleyPuffs.com. We are so grateful for them. Again, this is the new age snack available in your grocery aisle. In addition to CauleyPuffs.com, you can also find them on Amazon. Just search Cauley Puffs. They are impossible to miss. Throw them in your cart with everything else. Thank you to Cauley Puffs for their support of the Aaron Torres Pod. They've been with us since the start of football season, and they are not going anywhere. With that said, there is no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, all 4 college football quarterfinals are done. Again, we were going to do a live show earlier on Thursday morning, but with the 3 games going final on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, we decided to wait until after the Sugar Bowl. I think, first and foremost, it goes without saying, our thoughts are with, everybody here at AT Media. Our thoughts are with everybody in New Orleans, the city of New Orleans, the resilience of the people of New Orleans, and of course with the families that were impacted by the senseless tragedy that we saw on New Year's Eve into New Year's Day. So our thoughts are there. We wanted to wait till after the Sugar Bowl to react. But let's go ahead and react to all 4 college football playoff games, starting with the big one. Yeah, we are talking about the Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame defeats Georgia. Final score 23-10. Let me just say this. One, I think Marcus Freeman coached circles around Kirby Smart. Don't say it was because Carson Beck did not play. Notre Dame was the better team. Notre Dame was the deserving team. I thought Georgia and Kirby Smart specifically made 2 or 3 really big mistakes. Georgia gets the loss. Notre Dame advances. We now have a Notre Dame Penn State semifinal next Thursday, of course, followed by Ohio State and Texas on Friday. So the semifinals are set. Georgia, the SEC champ, is out. It is worth noting all 4 teams that got the first round bye have been eliminated, and the SEC is down to just 1 team in this thing as 2 Big Ten teams remain. Notre Dame advances, and the question has to be asked, was the SEC overrated all along? We'll get to that in just a moment, but let's start with the Sugar Bowl. Listen, man, it's been a long time for Notre Dame. Your producer, Matt, came up with the stat, 31 years since they've really won one of these marquee bowl games. It was a wild game that, listen, I think we all agree, it came down to really 2 or 3 sequences. Both went in favor of Notre Dame. Both went against Georgia. Listen, Sean McDonough at the end of the game tried to make a big deal about old number 39 that got called on the he got called for getting in the ref's way there. It led to a field goal, whatever. I'm sorry. That is not the difference in the game. By the way, shout out to number 39. Get ready to learn transfer portal, buddy, because I don't think Kirby Smart's going to take, going to be very happy with you after the game. But to me, listen, this whole thing came down to a couple sequences. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first sequence, as we all know, late first half, early second half, there was a 25-second stretch. If my math is correct, I'm not great at math, but I believe a 25-second stretch where Notre Dame scores 17 points that really blew open the game and really was the difference. By the way, drop your thoughts, drop your questions, drop your comments in the chat. Super chats, we will obviously prioritize, so get those in. We'll talk about that and the state of the SEC here coming up. But to me, listen, the game, it came down to those 25 or so seconds, late first half, early second half. As you know, Notre Dame kicks the field goal. Georgia gets the ball back. Gunnar Stockton on first down drops back. He gets stripped, recovered by Notre Dame. Notre Dame immediately scores a touchdown. One play, Riley Leonard to Bo Collins, the transfer from Clemson. Notre Dame takes that 10-3 lead into the half. And then opening kickoff of the second half. I was preparing the rest of this show during halftime. I look up, we're 15 seconds in. Notre Dame fans are going crazy because the opening kickoff is returned for a touchdown. And so listen, the game really kind of sort of came down to that right there. And I said earlier, I think this falls on Kirby Smart because here's the bottom line. Listen, this isn't a tear down Kirby Smart. He's the worst coach that's ever walked the face of the earth. 2-time national champion, multiple-time SEC champion, has had some great teams, obviously, outside of these past couple seasons. But listen, I don't, and I think I speak for a lot of people, I just don't understand the decision with Gunnar Stockton deep in your own territory to drop back and pass late in the first half. It's a 3-3 game. I don't want to say you've been in control. That doesn't really feel like, to me, is the right way. But it was kind of a back and forth game. I mean, I saw people saying early, Notre Dame can't handle the speed, the physicality, the whatever. I don't know if I'd go that far, but what I would say is 3-3 going into the half with a quarterback making his first career start, especially with Notre Dame getting the ball in the second half. I feel like you got to take it if you're Kirby. He got greedy. The ball gets stripped. Notre Dame scores. They go up 10-3. The kickoff return makes it 17-3. And from there, they were playing catch up immediately after that and really throughout the rest of the game and never really could catch up. Beyond that, and this was the big one, and this was the moment where Marcus Freeman kind of just shoved Kirby Smart in the locker, okay? Kind of shoved him in the locker, kind of took his head and dunked it in the toilet and said, SEC nothing. We're Notre Dame. We're coming for blood. Okay, so this was a crucial spot in this game. if you were watching, if you were not watching, I know many of you were either at work, coming back from work. It was probably about 6:30 Eastern time when this play happened. But what happened was pretty straightforward, okay? So Notre Dame has the ball deep in their own territory. There's about 7 minutes, 30 seconds left, and it's 4th and 2. They line up to punt. If Notre Dame punts it back, Georgia gets the ball back, about 7:15 to go, and obviously it's a 2-score game at that point. As they line up to punt, what happens? They immediately sprint their punt team off the field and sprint their offense on the field. Now, this is not where you criticize Georgia. Kirby Smart was actually prepared for it and ran his defense right back on the field. The play was designed to throw off Georgia. It did to a degree, but the play was really designed to, was Notre Dame actually going to run the play or not? We'll never know. But Riley Leonard got, I believe it was Jalen Walker, who's basically Georgia's best player, to jump off sides. It gives Notre Dame a first down. They pick up a subsequent first down. So keep in mind, it's a 23-10 game. That is obviously a 2-possession game with 7:17 to go. That is when that play happens. Notre Dame proceeds to run 5:17 off the clock before Georgia gets the ball back, right around the 2-minute warning, 2-minute timeout. Excuse me. We can't call it the 2-minute warning in college football. And from there, Georgia obviously has a couple plays. They cannot score. And really, it was the difference in the game. They ran 5 minutes and 17 seconds off the clock to seal the victory. Again, it didn't technically seal the victory, but Georgia needed 2 scores with about 2 minutes to go. And they were, listen, there's no other way to put it. Kirby Smart was outcoached late in that game. And I don't know what else there is to say other than congrats to Notre Dame. First of all, from the Notre Dame side of things, listen, I could take a victory lap here. I did pick Notre Dame to win this game outright. I don't feel like that this is the moment, that this is the time. It was a great back and forth game. Georgia, listen, they were right in the game. This was not the Rose Bowl, okay? This was not Oregon, Ohio State, where one team was outclassed. But what I liked about Notre Dame, really, in my opinion, going into this game, kind of played out in this game. What has Notre Dame done all season long? One, they have worn people down up front with the run game. Now, I'll be honest, early in the game, you kind of saw Riley Leonard drop back to pass a few times. You're kind of like, I see why the guy has not thrown for 250 yards in a single game all season, but they were able to establish the run game pretty early. They kind of just put the ball in Riley Leonard's hands and said, hey, dude, go make plays with your legs. Don't even worry about throwing it. Just go make plays with your legs. That's exactly what he did. He was great running the football. And then I think the other thing that really stood out, in my opinion, coming into this game, Notre Dame was great. And this is what we said. They have a great secondary and they are elite at forcing turnovers. And so to me, that was going to be an X factor. You have a young quarterback, first career start. He looked nervous. He looked pressured. Credit to the Notre Dame front seven, because the Notre Dame front seven without Riley Mills, they were able to get pressure on Georgia pretty much throughout the game, get Gunnar Stockton uncomfortable. Really felt like the entire second half, outside of a play or two. I know Georgia obviously did score a second half touchdown, but really the entire second half, what's his face? Gunnar Stockton was on his heels. So much credit to Notre Dame. They get the victory. For Georgia, again, I'm not going to tear down Georgia, because to me, a couple things. One, and by the way, we're going to have the big picture SEC conversation in a second. Don't you worry. I never believed that Georgia was a great team pretty much from about the third game on from the season, okay? And so to me, this can't be this monumental up. First of all, Notre Dame was favored, so you can't say it was like a monumental upset. But two, I said it in our preview last week. I like Georgia. I don't love Georgia. By the way, Georgia was my preseason national championship pick, so I would have loved for them to be awesome and unbeatable, looking like Ohio State, but that's never who they were. I go back to early in the season. Go back to the Kentucky game. Remember that game a million years ago? If Mark Stoops doesn't punt at his own 48 or whatever, what was it, 4th and 7? I can't even remember. Kentucky might beat Georgia. Then you go throughout the season, and yes, they had these really high highs, beating Texas twice, winning the SEC championship. But what did I say on the preview show last week? I said, I get that Georgia just won the SEC. They beat Texas. One, we're going to talk about Texas in a minute. Texas has some issues. But two, what did I say? The game before for Georgia, they could have easily lost to Texas, or they could have easily lost to Georgia Tech. It was an 8 overtime game at home against a 6-6 Georgia Tech team. By the way, a Georgia Tech team that Notre Dame beat up pretty good. A Georgia Tech team that Clemson beat. So I just bring it up because it's not to say that Georgia wasn't deserving or did not belong there, but it is to say this was a fundamentally flawed team all season long. They were the SEC champ. They deserve that 2 seed. They deserve the positioning based on the current playoff format, but it doesn't mean that they were infallible. It doesn't mean that they were unbeatable, and Notre Dame gets the win. So congrats to Notre Dame. I'll tell you what I want to do now very quickly, I do want to have the conversation. Producer Matt, make sure to get a timestamp on this because this feels like a standalone clip if ever there was one. Before we get to break, we got to have a big picture conversation on the SEC, okay? So with Georgia's loss, the SEC is obviously down to just Texas in the college football playoff. Texas barely survives against Arizona State, literally one play in the first overtime from losing. And I think it's time to have the big picture conversation about the SEC this season. Because here's the bottom line. This is not a criticism. This is just a reality, okay? Listen, first of all, you go back to the opening round of the college football playoff. I think I was one of the guys that was very vocal. Why are we trying to put a square peg into a round hole? Why are we trying to force Alabama and Ole Miss into this playoff just because Indiana looked bad, just because SMU looked bad? I said, look, just because Indiana looked bad doesn't mean that Alabama is good, okay? And so I bring it up because I was the one fighting for the Big Ten and the ACC and whoever, the Mountain West. And it's not that Alabama or Ole Miss did not deserve to be in. What was obvious was, first of all, I think once you got past about team 5, team 6 in college football, everybody had big flaws this year. But two, if you actually just watch the SEC, by the end of the year, you were like, this league is maybe the best league in college football, but it isn't obvious. It isn't overwhelming. And so you look at the state of the SEC in the postseason. Now, Ole Miss is playing their bowl game right now, so we'll get back to them, on the next episode. Texas is obviously still in this college football playoff. And listen, if they go on to beat Ohio State and win the national championship, they would play the winner of Penn State, Notre Dame for the title. Then, yeah, we can revisit this conversation. But what I truly believe about the SEC this year, what I believe is this. This is my honest opinion. And producer Matt, also timestamp this because I think it'll be good for a reel or whatever, a YouTube short. Is what I believe about the SEC is this. I do believe that the middle and the bottom of the SEC is better than any conference in college football, okay? By the end of the year, Florida was awesome. Vandy on any given day could beat you. Auburn on any given day could beat you. Oklahoma clearly on any given day could beat you. But just because the middle and the bottom was better does not mean that the middle, the middle and the top was better. That's not what it means at all. And if you watch these teams all year, you could see it. Alabama did not have an offense when you bottled up Jalen Milroe. Tennessee, by the end of the year, we kind of weren't really sure. What is this passing game with Nico? Is it good? Is it not? Texas. Oh, we're going to talk about Texas in a minute because Sark refuses to change quarterbacks, and I think it's going to cost him a natty. By the way, Georgia all year long had major flaws. That's not a criticism. That is just a reality. If you watch Georgia, most of the year they could not run the football. Most of the year they had issues on defense. This was not an infallible team. This was not Georgia from even last year, let alone 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And so this has been a flawed league. And I think the postseason has proven a couple things. Let's talk about the SEC's performance in the postseason because it hasn't been pretty. So Georgia, as the SEC champ, one and done. They're out. Not a knock on Notre Dame. It's just a reality. One and done. They're out. Texas does not look good, but we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they go on a run. How about this? Tennessee, third best team in the SEC. Gets destroyed by Ohio State. Now, you could say Ohio State's this, Ohio State's that. Well, Ohio State did lose the final game of the regular season. Ohio State did lose twice during the regular season, and Penn State was a play on the goal line away from beating them as well. Doesn't mean that Ohio State didn't belong. Doesn't mean that Ohio State might not be the best team in college football right now. But what it means is it's not, they weren't this unbeatable team all year. So Tennessee loses to Ohio State, gets destroyed, as a matter of fact. Then we all watch the ReliaQuest Bowl, Alabama, Michigan. Alabama, again, flawed team all season long. Could not move the football against Michigan. Part of it is credit to Michigan. Part of it is the fact that once you bottled up Jalen Milroe, they had no offense. Go to an Alabama message board right now. They want Jalen Milroe still has a year of eligibility. They want him out. They want him out because he's not good enough to be a quarterback in the SEC. I haven't even done the segment yet. I will give the benefit of the doubt to Alabama and to Kalen DeBoer, because I never believed that Jalen Milroe was the right quarterback for that system. But it doesn't change the fact that he was the starter, that he did play, and that offense was inconsistent all year. Ole Miss, again, as we're recording, they are getting ready to play in the Gator Bowl against Duke. We'll see what happens there, but it doesn't change the fact that Ole Miss did have a loss to Kentucky. It was probably the worst loss that anybody had all season long in terms of legitimate playoff contenders, okay? I mean, even Miami lost to a good Georgia Tech team, lost to a 9-3 future 10-3 Syracuse team. You go on and on down the list. South Carolina had a great season. They did lose to two of the three teams that we believe were in the conversation with them. And so my whole argument with the SEC was pretty straightforward. It was people just want to give the SEC the benefit of the doubt because in previous years they've been great, because in previous years they've been awesome, because in previous years they've been unbeatable. That was never the case this year. And here's the thing that I keep going back to. The SEC was already being given the benefit of the doubt. It's worth noting, by the way, it is worth noting, we understand that, first of all, they play one fewer league game than everybody else. So, first of all, let's just get Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina playing one more league game. Let's see if they can all get through that with 3 losses. But the thing was, Alabama and Ole Miss were already getting the benefit of the doubt. They were going into the final 2 weeks at 8-2. If they won their final 2, they would have both made the college football playoff. Alabama and Ole Miss were ranked ahead of Indiana and SMU. SMU took a loss. Indiana, loses to Ohio State. Both of those teams would have gotten in. The issue was they both lost to unranked teams. Alabama lost to an Oklahoma team that was terrible, okay? The crazy stat on Oklahoma? Let me pull this up really quick because I'm fired up now. Now I'm fired up. Oklahoma, first of all, lost their last 2 games after Alabama. They lost to LSU on the road, and then they lost to Navy in their bowl game. Here's the crazy part, though. Oklahoma lost their previous 4 games against FBS teams. Oklahoma lost their previous 4 games against FBS teams prior to the Alabama game. So basically, if you're taking out FCS opponents, Oklahoma went 1-6 in their final 7 games against FBS teams. They were not some team that got hot at the end of the year and it was a different deal. Ole Miss, at least you can say Florida was a good team by the end of the year. Alabama lost to a bad Oklahoma team. And so the SEC was already given the benefit of the doubt. And I will say, I don't know what the future holds. This stuff is all cyclical. But the one thing that I think is worth noting, I just tweeted it out. Last 366 days as we record here, it's January 2nd, 2025. Since January 1, 2024, Michigan, Ohio State, and Notre Dame have all beaten one SEC team in the college football playoff. Michigan last year against Alabama, Ohio State this year versus Tennessee, Notre Dame this year versus Georgia. By the way, Notre Dame started the year with a win at Texas A&M. Michigan just won their bowl game against Alabama. So if you go through the last 366 days, Ohio State, Notre Dame, and Michigan, 5-1 overall against the SEC, 3-0 in postseason play. Well, 4-0 in postseason play, 3-0 in college football playoff games. And so I just bring it up. This is not the SEC of 4, 5, 6 years ago. This is not the SEC of maybe 10 years ago, where Alabama beats Georgia in the SEC championship game, and that feels like the real national championship. where Johnny Manziel and Texas A&M don't even make the SEC championship game, and you feel like, well, if there had been an expanded playoff, that team might have won it all. This league has had flawed teams all year. We're going to get to Texas in a minute, and I'll just wrap by saying this. I don't know what next year holds. I've already started kind of doing the look-ahead stuff to 2025, and listen, I think Florida's going to be really good. I think Auburn's going to be improved. Texas and Georgia and Alabama are all going to be really, really, really talented. Tennessee's going to be good. LSU, by the way, LSU's going all in the portal. And so I just bring it up because next year it might be a different conversation. But we can't just default to the SEC is clearly the best because I say so. It's no, you're not. Just watch the games every week. And so credit to Notre Dame, credit to them getting the win, but credit, by the way, to the rest of college football for catching up, because to me, I don't think this Georgia game is the microcosm that proves the SEC is overrated. I do think Alabama getting beat up pretty bad in their bowl game, because you could say they didn't get destroyed, but Michigan got up to a 13-0 lead and then basically just sat on the football the rest of the game. Michigan, Alabama losing their bowl game, Oklahoma losing to Navy, Tennessee getting destroyed by Ohio State. You go on and on down the list. I just think it was a bad bowl season, and I think it proves this wasn't the best league in college football this year, or at least if they were the best league, they shouldn't be given the indefinite benefit of the doubt. A 9-3 Alabama team shouldn't get in over an 11-1 Indiana team just because you say so, Twitter follower with 72 followers. I'm just sorry. It's not the case. Congrats to Notre Dame. Notre Dame wins the Sugar Bowl. And man, oh man, what a conversation that was. What a game that was. All right, so what we're going to do, take a quick break, come back. When we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit of the rest of the college football playoff. Take some of your questions. Producer Matt, if we have any good ones, feel free to drop them in. Again, we will prioritize super chats. If you want to get in first, drop a super chat. We appreciate your support of the show. Quick break, take your questions, and we got to talk a little bit about the rest of the college football playoff. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. Now I'm back. Good to be back. So fun first segment. Producer Matt, let's pop up some questions, probably specifically about the Sugar Bowl, ACC or SEC, etc. Then we will get to the rest of the college football playoff because we have had a lot of good college football the last couple days. Mad Hatter SC says, great game by Notre Dame. They won in every phase. I think that the format of having byes then having to play on neutral site, bye teams should get one home game. So great question or comment by Mad Hatter. I think it's more of a comment than a question. So I actually happen to agree. Listen, I think where it's going to show up, I think I'm very curious to see what these semifinals look like. I was talking to somebody about this over the course of the last couple of days. The quarterfinal sites, I think we're always going to have, pretty good turnout just because of the fact that they're around the holidays. It's New Year's. Everybody has time off. If you're a Notre Dame fan, if you're a Penn State fan, Ohio State fan, Texas is at least playing in Dallas. But if you're an Ohio State fan, if you're a Penn State fan, think about being a Notre Dame fan. You leave New Orleans here on probably a Friday morning, and you're going to get on a plane on Tuesday or Wednesday to go to Notre Dame's next game. Now, maybe because these four teams, the brands are so big, it won't impact the schedule. But I just believe that having 3 rounds of quarterfinal games or 3 rounds of neutral site games, I just don't believe can work in the world of college football, right? I mean, think about, a Penn State fan, right? Penn State plays in the Big Ten championship game. Then they immediately have to, host a playoff game. Then they go to Phoenix. Now they're going to Miami, and they could be going to Atlanta a week later. Like, if you're a fan, you can't do all of that. Now, again, Penn State, maybe their alumni base is so big that they're going to be able to sell tickets to all these games. But what if a smaller school, what if a Boise State had advanced? What if even a smaller power conference school had advanced? Like, it's just, so the point I'm trying to make, I think we need 2 changes to this format. One, I do agree with the fact that the 4 buys shouldn't necessarily go to the 4 highest ranked conference champions. I think it was done with the best of intentions to kind of allow those teams and allow those programs to be rewarded for winning a championship. I think it also kind of incentivized teams to want to play in their conference championship games. But I don't think just because Boise won the Mountain West that if they're the 9th best team, I don't think they should get the 3 seed in a bye. Whatever. Now, I think we have to have a conversation about conference championship games if we're going to eliminate the auto bye for conference champions. That's another conversation. I think the second thing we do have to do, we have to eliminate neutral site games in the quarterfinals. And I say that, by the way, as somebody who's a couple miles here from the Rose Bowl. Rose Bowl is the greatest venue in college football. New Year's Day at the Rose Bowl is unlike anything that I've ever experienced in college football. I've been to 4 or 5 of them, okay? But at the same time, you can't ask fans to go on the road 4 or 5 times over the course of a 6-week period, especially once you get past New Year and nobody has any time off. So I'm curious to see what ticket prices are over these coming weeks. And I think the solution is first round on campus, second round on campus. I think really the third round should even be on campus. Make it like the Super Bowl. Make the AFC, NFC championship games go, somebody plays at home. Why can't we have, Ohio State playing at Texas this weekend and Penn State playing at Notre Dame, or I guess Notre Dame would technically be playing at Penn State. I think it'd be better for the sport. But at the very least, you can't have 3 straight rounds on neutral sites. And I do think it's obviously a disadvantage to the Oregons, the Georgias, as to having no 0 home games in the playoff. Worth noting, by the way, I do think the whole getting a first round bye hurt teams. I think that conversation is kind of stupid. And the reason is all 4 teams that won, Notre Dame, Penn State, Texas, and Ohio State. Yes, I get that they all played last week and the other teams didn't. They got a bye. All 4 teams that won, though, were favored. So I don't buy this notion that somehow, some way, like this is some big indictment on getting a bye is a terrible thing. I just don't buy it. Producer Matt, what else we got? This is from Young Seminole. Taking a guessing you're an FSU fan. This just shows the issue with the whole strength of schedule thing SEC fans like to yell. Young Seminole brings up a great point. So listen, I can't believe I'm saying this. Connor Stallions, remember him? Michigan guy, he's a Michigan man. He is very active on Twitter. He's a really good follow, actually, because he clearly thinks a lot about college football. He put out a big rant about how strength of schedule is basically a bogus stat because strength of schedule works from the premise of preseason bias. A lot of strength of schedule starts with these are the top 25 teams in the preseason. Well, if you beat one of them, it improves your strength of schedule. It's like, who's to say that this team's good or that team's good or whatever? I think for the most part, preseason rankings are pretty good. Notre Dame, Penn State, Ohio State, Texas, all these teams were in the top 10 in the preseason, but so was Florida State. USC was like a top 20 team. I can't think of everybody else off the top of my head, but strength of schedule is an inherently biased stat. And what I keep going back to is what I've said since the playoffs started. If you wanted to argue that Indiana shouldn't be in because they had 0 wins over ranked teams, Texas had 0 wins over ranked teams too. So if you put in Indiana, you got to put in Texas. But I bring it up because it does prove that the strength of schedule stuff is bogus. I think it just proves that the depth of college football, the depth of these teams just isn't what it used to be. Georgia just doesn't have dudes that can overwhelm you guy after guy after guy. Notre Dame, first 22 or so, They were as good as Georgia, and Georgia didn't have that next wave of guys like Bama used to, like Georgia used to. So I think that's what it shows. A couple more that I do want to talk ASU Texas really quick. I'd like an explanation from this guy on how he thinks the SEC is overrated. Well, Randall, I think the SEC is overrated for this reason. Georgia was the SEC champ, just lost on a neutral field in SEC country. Texas basically needed a miracle to beat Arizona State and a bogus ref call, which we're going to get to in just a minute. Tennessee got smoked by Ohio State. Who else? Oklahoma lost to Navy. Now, we all support the troops. That's also a game Oklahoma shouldn't lose ever. Alabama got destroyed by Michigan. And I think what it says to me, I don't think it's debatable. Top of the Big Ten was clearly better than the top of the SEC this year. Ohio State, Oregon, and Penn State in some order, or Texas, Georgia, and Tennessee, it's not even debatable. And then I think you could look at Indiana. I think you could look at Michigan. Michigan just beat Alabama. Don't tell me that Michigan can't play anybody. And by the way, if you want to argue about Indiana, Indiana beat Michigan. The same Michigan team that just beat Alabama, Indiana beat. So I think you could go 5-7 deep. And by the way, if I think the Big Ten is better, I don't think it's like this monumental gap. I don't think the SEC is the MAC. But we, at some point, like Randall, like at some point, results on the field do have to matter. It can't just be, well, I decided in August that they have the best teams. Okay, Oklahoma was a preseason top 25 team. Do you believe they're a top 25 team right now? I don't know what you want me to say. By the way, think about this. USC, 4-5 in the Big Ten this year. 2-0 versus SEC teams. Kind of worth having an interesting conversation about, don't you agree? Producer Matt, anything else before we get to some of the other results in the college football playoff so far? Let's see if we got anything else here. Using the Feinbaum rule, Oregon and Georgia didn't belong in the playoffs, says Daniel. Shout out to Feinbaum. Dude, can someone do me a favor in all seriousness? Can we check on Paul Feinbaum? Can we check on Peter Burns? I think Peter Burns is the guy that I'm really worried about. I mean, this guy, these two, I mean, Paul Feinbaum, here's the thing. I don't normally criticize other media members. I'm really trying to be not mean here. Like Paul Feinbaum, I think he kind of is in on the joke. Like, I think he just says he's just going to say whatever to get clicks. I don't hate it. That's not the way I do things. I really believe what I say. The Paul Feinbaum example I always use was in back-to-back weeks during the summer. He said, quote, Deion Sanders is the most overrated coach in college football. And then a week later, he said Deion Sanders needs to replace Lincoln Riley at USC. Okay. So that's just a guy that's just saying whatever to make headlines. I think some of these people at SEC Network really believe like, oh my God, this league is so much better than everybody else because we have cool facilities and because we won a bunch of championships before. Michigan was the national champion the year before, was last year. 3 of the 4 teams are from the Midwest, from the Big Ten footprint, even though, of course, Notre Dame isn't in the Big Ten. The SEC is not the best team, and I'm sorry for poor Paul Feinbaum, but yeah, to his point, might be time to reconsider auto bids for Georgia in the SEC because they did not look very good this year. 1 or 2 more before we get out of here. Anything else, Producer Matt? Okay. CFP needs to tell the Rose Bowl to kick rocks, refusing to budge off their 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff. CFP does not need Rose Bowl. No one would care about the game anymore if it wasn't a playoff game. Luke, this hurts my soul because, like I said, as of right now, I do live in Pasadena. Might be moving here in the next few weeks. Neither here nor there. Going to have some new studio space, by the way. If you want to advertise, we're going to have some cool stuff in the background that you can advertise on. Hit me up at Aaron Torres podcastquestions@gmail.com. But I bring it up because it pains me because the Rose Bowl is awesome. The Rose Bowl is incredible. Doing the parade and then the game is awesome. I talked to Ohio State fans this week that did it. Do you think the Rose Bowl thinks it's like 1984 and college football revolves around them? Luke, I hate to say it. I think you're right. Rose Bowl kind of needs to reconsider some things. And I think it'll be interesting what happens going forward. Because I do think, 1, I think we're going to get more playoff expansion. We shouldn't, but I think we will. And 2, I do think we are going to get to a world where I don't believe first round bye. I don't believe all of these rounds are going to be on neutral sites. I think at some point it's going to be like I said a minute ago, maybe the semifinals and the finals. Well, Rose Bowl, do you still want to be part of this? Because guess what? It ain't going to be New Year's Day. So, Luke, I think you have a good point. One more, Producer Matt, and then we will get to, I just want to talk about the Arizona State, Texas thing real quick. Young Seminole, interesting point. This was Texas's first year in the SEC, and they were in the playoffs last year. SEC can't truly claim them, yet that's like taking the 96 Bulls and moving them to the West and claiming they are the best and claiming the West is the best. I do think it's interesting. Texas is the last team standing, and of course they were in the Big 12. All right, speaking of Texas, let's go ahead and switch gears. By the way, Jim Mora is tweeting about tampering again. I'll have to look into that after we get off air. Listen, so a couple things on the other 3 college football playoff games. We'll very briefly talk the Rose Bowl in a minute. I got to take a half a second to talk about the Peach Bowl, Texas versus Arizona State. Texas came in as a 14.5-point favorite, overwhelming favorite. And listen, college football is a crazy sport. When a school like Texas, Vince Young, Colt McCoy, Cedric Benson, all the all-timers that have played there, maybe Arch Manning down the road, they're playing a school whose most famous alum, Jake Plummer, owns a mushroom farm. Yet Arizona State went play for play, toe for toe, incredible game. Texas wins 38. Was it 38-34 or 38-31? They won 39-31 in overtime. Texas deserved to win, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, do we have to talk about that pass interference play or that targeting play, okay? So I want to go ahead and dive into the targeting play because it's all anybody was talking about. You even turned on First Take, you turned on Get Up with Mike Greenberg. They don't really talk a ton of college football. Now, I understand it's the middle of the week. It's New Year's, this January 2nd. It's all that was on TV yesterday. But we got to go ahead and dive in to the play that, listen, it didn't decide the game, but it doesn't mean that it was not egregious. I am, of course, talking about the targeting that was not called targeting, that should have been called targeting, that blew up the internet. And listen, there's nothing else to say other than that Arizona State got royally screwed in that spot. For people who weren't watching the game, just insanity, because Arizona State in the fourth quarter was down 24-8, okay? They're down 24-8. They then score a touchdown, convert the 2 points. Score another touchdown, convert the 2 points, tie it up at 24. They end up with the ball back with a minute to go. It's third and, I believe, 14 or 15, something like that. Sam Leavitt, who was incredible, he drops back. He throws it over the middle. It is tipped, but a 10-yard completion to his receiver who proceeds to get his lights knocked out, okay? We could pretend like that's not what happened, but it is what it is. So we stop the game, check on the player. I think he was doing okay, whatever. Not whatever. I don't want to be insincere to, if he got hurt or whatever. But we check on the player, and we immediately are like, let's just check for targeting, okay? And so we go to the monitor. And the one thing I will say, very rarely does Twitter universally agree on something. And it felt like Twitter pretty much universally all agreed that this was targeting. Okay, so really quickly, this is what I want to do. I want to actually read to you the literal definition of targeting. And I'll try to be quick. Article 4. No player shall target and make forcible contact to the head or neck area of a defenseless opponent with the helmet, forearm, hand, fist, elbow, or shoulder. This foul requires that there be at least one indicator of targeting, see below. When in question, it is a foul. So if there's one indicator of targeting, it's considered targeting. Targeting means that a player takes aim at an opponent for purposes of attacking with forcible contact that goes beyond making legal tackle or legal block or playing the ball. Some indicators of targeting include, but are not limited to, launching of a player, leaving their feet to attack an opponent by upward forward thrust of the body to make forcible contact in the head or neck area, a crouch followed by an upward and forward thrust to attack with forcible contact, leading with the helmet, shoulder, forearm, fist, whatever, lowering the helmet, lowering the head before attacking by initiating forcible contact with the crown of the helmet. So basically, for it to be targeting, 3 things need to happen, okay? 3 things need to happen. There has to be forcible contact, head or neck area, crown of the helmet, or lowering of the helmet. I hate to say it, but if you watch the video, those 3 things are essentially indisputable. If you want to say he didn't use the crown of his helmet, well, he lowered his helmet, okay? And so I just bring it up because it was really bad. It was an egregious call. By the way, don't take my word for it. I'm just a dude with a microphone and a pretty popular podcast, okay? Producer Matt, what did Terry McCauley, NBC's rules expert, say during that match? Okay, so this was literally during the game. Terry McCauley tweeted, clearly a targeting foul. By the way, what did Gene Steratore say? CBS's rules official. He said this was now on Thursday morning. My phone has been burning up all morning. Yes, this should have been a flag for targeting in Texas ASU. It meets all of the criteria of targeting, Rule 9-1-4. So don't take my word that it was targeting. Just take the word of the people that are paid to do this. By the way, on the broadcast, whoever the rules official is at ESPN, I don't even know who it is. There's so many darn rules officials these days. Shout out to Mike Pereira, the OG. He's the Michael Jordan of rules officials. I don't know if he tweeted. I said on the broadcast it was targeting. So it was targeting. Everyone who is paid to do this for a living says it's targeting. And here's the funny thing. The only people that I have heard make the argument it was not targeting are Texas fans. That's when you know it was targeting. By the way, my favorite with Texas fans, Isaiah Bond also got targeted earlier in the game. So your argument isn't that it wasn't targeting. Your argument is just, hey, one of our players got targeted too and it wasn't called, so that makes it even. Just because Isaiah Bond did get targeted does not mean that that was the right call in the moment for the referees to not make that call. Arizona State was forced to punt. Now, what I will say, Arizona State, it did not cost them the game, okay? It did not cost Arizona State the game because at the end of the day, let's just be honest about Arizona State. They don't have a great field goal kicker, so even if they get the first down, there's no guarantee they make the field goal. Bert Auburn misses the field goal. And then, by the way, on top of that, it is also kind of worth noting that in the first overtime, Arizona State had Texas on 4th and 13, had them in 4th and 13, and Texas was able to convert and score a touchdown to force a second overtime. So I can't sit here and say that that is the reason that Texas lost the game, but it doesn't mean that it wasn't targeting. When all three rules officials say it's targeting, and you just feel bad for Arizona State. Because listen, I'm one of those people. I would rather the refs not decide things on 50-50 calls and let players play, but that wasn't a 50-50 call. We all agree. If that's not targeting, then just take targeting out of the rule book. And by the way, maybe there is an argument. Is it a dumb rule? Is it not a dumb rule? It might be a dumb rule, but it is still a rule. And if the rule is going to be in the rule book, you have to apply it correctly, especially in the biggest moments. And you can't say, the refs have to hold their whistle. This isn't basketball where every play is a ticky-tack foul. This isn't even like holding where you could call it on every play. It was so obviously targeting, and we just got proof that it was. Really quickly, do want to talk about the Texas side of things, okay? So Texas does survive. I think Texas is in big trouble here. So Texas survives. They're playing Ohio State in the semifinals. That game will be Friday. Thursday night will be Penn State and Notre Dame. I think Texas is in real trouble here. Listen, they survive. Like I just said, the targeting is not why Arizona State lost. It is not why Texas won, even though I disagree with the call. But let's talk about Texas for a minute, because Texas, to me, I think they're in a really precarious spot, okay? So Texas advances, but I think what is concerning, they win 39-31. And what's crazy is if you just look at the box score, 39 points, Quinn Ewers, 20 of 30, a couple touchdowns, this, that, the other thing. I think it's pretty obvious to me, if you're watching Texas right now, it is so clear that Steve Sarkisian does not trust Quinn Ewers. And it's crazy because, I hear criticism of Sark. I actually think this has been Sark's kind of his best coaching job. Like Sark has basically decided from about the Vanderbilt game on, the Oklahoma game on, hey, I can't trust this guy. I need to rely on my defense. I need to rely on my run game. I need to chew up clock, win ugly, and survive and advance to the next round. If you look at Texas's performances, basically like the last really 6 or 7 games, their entire game plan in every game except for Clemson, because Clemson's defense was terrible. They just fired their defensive coordinator. Texas's game plan in all these games was pretty straightforward. It was get an early lead, no matter how small it is. Hope that your defense plays absolutely insane, which they always do, because that Texas defense is incredible. The Texas defense is unbelievable. Like that Colin Simmons kid is a true freshman. Like we talk about Jeremiah Smith, would he be the number 1 overall pick this year? it's hard for me to believe that Colin Simmons would not be a top 10 pick if he was eligible for the draft this year. Anthony Hill would be a first-round pick if he was eligible for the draft this year, the linebacker. And they have obviously the Thorpe Award winner, the best defensive back in the country. The Mbuka kid, I'm trying to blanking on his name, the kid from Clemson that transferred, is a monster at cornerback. So the defense is amazing. The run game is amazing, but that's been their game plan for the last 5, 6, 7 weeks. You go back to the regular season, beat Arkansas 20-10 in Fayetteville. The Kentucky game, they win 31-14. But if you watch that game, I went back and looked it up to make sure my mind wasn't, messing with me. They ran the ball 46 times against Kentucky. The Texas A&M game was a 17-7 win. The Georgia game, they put up 20 points, before overtime. And so it's wild to me that they are in this spot with Quinn Ewers. It's kind of crazy because we did a segment on the Quinn Ewers portal conversation. And I think that's a very fascinating conversation going forward. I don't know what he's going to do. He's not going to be a first-round pick. If he comes back, I think he can help teams. I also don't know if you can win a national championship with him. And listen, I give Sark credit for being loyal to Arch Manning, but I'll also say this. I find it so strange that Sark was willing to go to Arch Manning in the first Georgia game, but has not been willing to pull the plug on Quinn Ewers in the last, really dating back to the SEC championship game. Okay, you might not have needed Arch against Clemson. At some point, you're going to need Arch, and you're not winning this championship with Quinn Ewers. You are not beating Ohio State, the team that we just saw at the Rose Bowl, with Quinn Ewers. So I'll be fascinated to see what they do. But listen, I hate to put it on Quinn Ewers because I'm sure he's a great kid. I don't think Texas can win a national championship with Quinn Ewers as its starting quarterback. So we'll see what happens with Texas. They survive against Arizona State. Listen, it's early. I have not seen an updated point spread. I believe that Texas opened as like a 6.5 point underdog against Georgia or against Ohio State, in the semifinals. It's down to 5.5 now. Part of that might be because the game is in Texas. I don't think Texas can win the national championship with Quinn Ewers as their quarterback. I don't know why Sark isn't going to them earlier. Why isn't Sark going to Arch Manning? But it's an interesting conversation. Really quickly, listen, Ohio State, Oregon. I think if we had done a show on Wednesday night, we could have broken down Ohio State. Listen, I don't think there's much else to add right now. We just got to give credit where credit is due. Ohio State's the best team in college football right now. And listen, I got to own it. I had Ryan Day fired after the Michigan game. I did like 7 different segments on why Ryan Day should be fired, why Ryan Day stinks. He's overrated. Even after the Tennessee game, I said that's his best performance as Ohio State's head coach, but can they sustain it over a 3, 4, 5 game period to win a national championship? Well, it sure freaking looks like it because they destroy Oregon in that game. 41-21. It wasn't close. 34-0 before Oregon scores right before the half, makes it 34-8. They Oregon scored again to make it 34-15. But I thought Kirk Herbstreit and Fowler did a good job of even when they scored, it took them half of the third quarter, and the defense hadn't been able to stop Ohio State all game. So it was never close. The other big story, Jeremiah Smith. This is what sucks about doing a show a day later. There's nothing to add to Jeremiah Smith. Jeremiah Smith is just such a freak. I've seen people say he would be the number 1 pick in this 2025 NFL draft if he were eligible. Listen, I think you're always going to give the benefit of the doubt to the quarterback spot. So I think Shador or Cam Ward would probably still go number 1. It doesn't change the fact that Jeremiah Smith, we've never seen anything like him. And I think if you were just drafting players based on raw talent, not so much, do you need a quarterback? Do you not? Yeah, he's probably going number 1. So Ohio State gets the win. They play Texas next week. Penn State, Boise, again, another one. I could do 7-8 minutes on Penn State. They won, dominated, whatever. They didn't really dominate, but I will just tell you, they advanced. I think with Penn State, the actual interesting conversation is with Drew Aller. I know he said he's coming back. I've talked to people at Penn State. They have kind of alluded to the fact that they kind of just believe that he just feels and his family feels like, is he ready to be the face of a franchise, the face of an organization, the guy that everybody on the building is counting on? I get that. You beat Notre Dame, all of a sudden, I think there's talk. Like I think if Drew Aller entered the NFL draft, I think there's a conversation that he could be the number 1 overall pick. I think he probably would be the number 1 overall pick. I love Shedeur. I like Shedeur more than most people. But Drew Aller's what, 6'6", runs the ball well. He's getting better every game. So I'll be curious if you're Penn State, if you win this Notre Dame game. I think that conversation I think that conversation is going to ramp up over the next week or so. We'll see what happens. All right, I'll tell you what. I think we're going to go ahead and get out of here. Matt, do we have any good questions before we get out of here? It looks like the chat has died down a little bit. Anything interesting before we go? Lawrence says Ohio State is going to manhandle Texas like Andre the Giant would whoop Macho Man. Shout out to all the wrestling fans in the chat. Wrestling is not Torres' area of expertise, so I apologize. But I know, back in the day, Andre the Giant was a monster. So tell you what, we're going to get out of here. If you are not subscribed to the podcast feed or to the YouTube channel, make sure to do so. YouTube.com/Aaron Torres. YouTube, Aaron Torres Pod. Just search it. We talk college football, college basketball. That's really it for today's show. Appreciate everybody's support. Appreciate everybody tuning in. Make sure, by the way, you're following on Twitter, Instagram, etc. I think it's time to go. Probably won't do a new show until Sunday night. Obviously, with tomorrow being Friday, it's kind of just a weird week. But we'll come back Sunday, maybe first look at the college football playoff. Also a big week in college basketball. We'll do some college basketball stuff on the YouTube channel later this week. 3 top 25 matchups in the SEC this weekend. Alabama hosting Oklahoma, Kentucky, a top 10 matchup against Florida, Arkansas traveling to Tennessee. So we'll do all that next on the next episode, Sunday night. I think I'm going to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back. New episode, Aaron Torres Pod. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Appreciate it.